Now that we can pick the cheapest model that still meets our latency budget, we turn to prompt caching in the order in which we apply optimizations, still leaning on the 4 helpers that keep every lab's console output predictable as we start squeezing even more cost out of our pipeline. You paste the same system prompt into every call. The same docs. The same tool definitions. And the model rereads every single token, every single time, while the bill ticks up. That is not inference cost. That is waste. One cache breakpoint stops it. We will place it, measure the real saving, and lock in an optimization order so every change you make after this compounds. By the end, your prompts will run cheaper and faster without changing what they output. You're learning prompt caching and optimization order techniques that make your AI interactions more efficient. If you want to take that further into real-world administration, this course shows you how to build AI agents that automate Microsoft 365 tasks using tools like Microsoft Graph, Python, and Azure AI. It covers everything from user lifecycle management to security investigations, with hands-on labs and a full capstone project. We begin by placing a cache breakpoint exactly where it delivers real value, using the cache control directives to mark that point. Next, we measure the actual cost saving with the usage API instead of just guessing, so you can prove the impact. Then we apply optimizations in a compounding order, layering system instructions, prompt structure, and cache placements so each improvement builds on the last. This sequence ensures your prompt caching strategy is both intentional and verifiable, and you walk away with a repeatable method you can apply to any high-volume prompt workflow. Prompt caching lets you reuse a processed prefix across API calls, cutting latency and cost. But it only works if you place the cache breakpoint on the last block that stays identical between requests. The render order is fixed: tools, then system, then messages. If you put the breakpoint after the user message, the cache key's on that volatile content and never hits. This step shows the correct placement, after the system prompt, where the prefix is stable and long enough to meet the minimum token threshold. You'll see 3 requests, a cache write, then 2 reads, proving the pattern works. Then we'll deliberately move the breakpoint and watch the hit rate drop to 0. Let's walk through Priya's support bot. The API always renders tools first, then the system prompt, then the messages. Priya adds cache control to the last block of her 2000 token system prompt. This creates a breakpoint right after the system prompt, caching that entire stable prefix. The fresh user question sits after the breakpoint, so it never invalidates the cache. On the next call, the system prompt is served from cache, saving tokens. If the system prompt were under 1024 tokens, the cache control would be silently ignored, no error, just no caching. We'll run a script that simulates 3 API calls with the breakpoint placed after the system prompt. Watch the token counts: the first request writes the cache, and the next 2 read from it, showing a perfect hit rate. The script imports the lab runtime helpers and calls step header to display the module title and blueprint mapping. Then it prints the token layout: tools at 338 tokens, system at 1272, and messages at 344. The breakpoint sits right after the system block, creating a stable prefix of 1610 tokens, well above the minimum. The first request shows cache creation input tokens at 1610 and cache read at 0, meaning it wrote the cache. The next 2 requests show 0 creation tokens and 1610 read tokens, confirming cache hits. Then we move the breakpoint after the user message and run a 4th request. Cache read drops to 0 because nothing stable follows the volatile part. The output confirms the theory. Request 1 writes the cache with 1610 tokens. Requests 2 and 3 read that same prefix, saving processing time. When the breakpoint shifts after the user message in request 4, the cache read count is 0, exactly what the pitfall warns about. Volatile content before the breakpoint invalidates everything after it, and the tool list counts even though it feels static. On the exam, you'll see a scenario asking why the hit rate is 0. Now you know to trace the render order. When you add prompt caching, it's easy to assume you're saving money. But cache writes cost about 1.25 times the normal input price, so a prefix used only once is actually a net loss. The break-even point is roughly the second request. That means you must measure, not assume. In this step, we'll run 20 requests with the same stable prefix and calculate the real cost with and without caching. You'll watch for one critical field, cache read input tokens. If it stays 0 across repeated requests, caching isn't happening even if your code looks right. Let's go measure. Priya sends 3 identical requests to a model with prompt caching enabled. The first call costs 1,250 input tokens because the 1,000 token prompt incurs a 25% cache write surcharge. The second identical call reads from cache, costing only 100 cache read tokens, which offsets the earlier write premium and breaks even. The third call again costs just 100 cache read tokens, confirming sustained savings. But when Priya inserts datetime.now into the system prompt, every request becomes unique, forcing a fresh 1,250 token write each time. Without checking cache read input tokens, Priya would assume caching works, missing the silent invalidation entirely. We'll send 20 identical requests and then price out the token usage. The output will show cache creation tokens, cache read tokens, and uncached tokens, followed by a cost breakdown that reveals a 69% saving when caching works. This step is a guided exercise, so the script sets up the lab environment and then leaves the implementation to you. It imports the lab runtime helpers, calls step header to display the module title and blueprint mapping, then prints an exam note reminding you this appears as a scenario on the test. A pitfall warning follows, emphasizing that reading isn't doing. Finally, it calls checkpoint to mark your progress. The real work, sending the 20 requests and calculating the savings, is what you'll build in the to-do block. The authored output shows exactly what we expected. After 20 requests, the first one incurred 1,610 cache creation tokens. The next 19 requests read those same tokens from cache, totaling 30,590 cache read tokens. Only 6,880 tokens were uncached. Pricing this out, the cached run cost about 6 cents, while without caching it would have been over 19 cents, a 69% saving. But notice the silent invalidator, adding datetime.now to the system prompt makes every request unique, dropping cache read input tokens to 0 and returning the cost to the full uncached price with no error. On the exam, that one field is how you know caching is actually working. When you stack optimizations, the order matters because each one multiplies the effect of the ones before it. If you cache too early, you bake in the wrong model's prices and have to redo the tuning after a model swap. The rule is, first reduce what you send and generate, then choose the model, then cache, and finally move what can wait to batch. This step walks through a real cost scenario where applying the right order cuts the monthly bill by 77%, while the wrong order forces you to remeasure and retune. Watch for the compounding percentages as each layer is added. Priya's chatbot handles 10,000 queries a day. She starts by cutting output tokens from 200 to 100, which immediately halves the output cost. Next, she switches from GPT-4o to GPT-4o Mini, lowering the per token price before any caching. Only then does she add prompt caching on the 800 token system prompt, getting a 50% discount on those cached inputs. Finally, she batches non-urgent report generation to off-peak hours, avoiding any rework on the live chatbot. This order compounds the savings, dropping total costs by over 60%. The script prints a table showing baseline costs, then applies structured output, model right-sizing, caching, and batching in that order. Each row shows the new monthly cost and the percentage drop from the previous step. This step is a guided exercise, so the code is a scaffold that prints the header, exam note, pitfall, and checkpoint. The actual implementation is left for you to build, following the objectives and expected output shape. The header sets the exam domain and technique, the exam note reminds you this appears as a scenario, and the pitfall warns that reading is not the same as running it. The authored output shows the optimization table. Baseline is $13,590 a month with a P95 latency of 5.2 seconds. Cutting output tokens drops cost by 28%. Right-sizing to Sonnet 5 drops it another 38%. Adding prompt caching saves 26% more, and batching the non-urgent 60% cuts another 30%. The total reduction is 77%. The wrong order, caching first against Opus prices, then switching to Sonnet, forces a remeasure and redo. The pitfall is real, optimizations are not independent, and caching before choosing a model bakes in the old model's prices. We have covered the 3 automation tasks in this course: placing a cache breakpoint where it delivers value, measuring the saving with cumulets rather than assuming it, and applying optimizations in a compounding order. The single most useful thing to carry away is that optimization order matters more than any single setting. Automate the sequence, and the savings stack up without you having to revisit the portal every time. Let's lock in what we learned. First, place cache breakpoints where static content ends and dynamic content begins, otherwise you waste tokens. Second, always measure the actual savings using usage metrics, never assume. And third, optimize your prompts first, then cache, because a leaner prompt multiplies the benefit. That order compounds your savings and keeps your application fast and cost-effective.